started, do you have any announcements first there, Job?
I do not.
I guess just like, even though we don't take roll, let the record show Councilwoman Blanchett and Councilman O'Neill are excused. And we do have an addition to the agenda under other business. Jeff's going to discuss our options for recycling. We have to make, it sounds like we have to make some type of decision before the end of the month if we're going to continue, just turn it all off, or what we're going to do. So, first, discuss amending Article 6, establish grade and drainage control, Chapter 86, buildings and building regulations. Is that Dave? Who is this?
We'll start with Dave, but I know it'll be so high, so he might as well join as well up here, and we can talk quickly about it.
Go ahead, that's it here, man. Somebody sitting here?
No, you are.
You are.
Okay. We hit that time of year where lots of rain's coming down, and we start receiving complaints about yards, people draining on other people's yards. And some of it, people do bring in dirt, they do patios and such, they build up their yard and they do drain. We have an ordinance on the book that's very broad, that sort of takes care of this issue in case we have to enforce it. But at the same time, we're talking with Sohail and Randy, and they felt that we needed something a little more focused than the broad ordinance we have, and that's what we were bringing in front of you. A little bit more of a focus on how, when Sohail's crew go out there, they can determine whether adequate drainage is happening. So if there's any detailed questions.
That's in summary, you did a good job. What we're facing is complaints from neighbors that are calling about drainage issues that are caused by their neighbors filling up their yards. We get to the site, we see a drainage problem, but we cannot enforce it because we cannot make these neighbors remove the fill they put in place. They put the fill without any permits, without any review, without any due process. So unless we can have them test the fill to prove it, and even if we prove it, we cannot enforce it, we need something on the books that can make him just correct that situation. The only way to do it is through an ordinance like this one here that prevents him from doing that grading without submitting to the building department for review, for approval, for filing for permits, and for doing it right before they can start filling. We faced that situation on Grange Road about 8 months ago. We still don't have any correction to that issue. Even the county and the state couldn't enforce it because, again, they don't have any permits requirements like what we're proposing to have on the books now. So if this passes, what will happen is anytime anybody considers that I want to fill in my backyard, before they do so, they need to come into the city.
So how do you determine, like, say, if somebody just wants, if they've got some low spots in their yard, they get 5 yards delivered, is that a change in grade, or?
It is. It is definitely changing grade. Any dirt they put in to correct their own drainage problem needs to be reviewed and approved, because by the time they finish correcting their problem, they're going to cause somebody else an issue. And how do we prevent their drainage from going elsewhere unless we review and find out an outlet for them that doesn't impact the neighbor? Technically speaking, any grading, any correction to their drainage shall be confined to their lot, not project over somebody else's. And when they consider that, they should hire somebody to check the grades before, check the grades after, then find out which way the drainage is going to go without ending up in their neighbor's yard or in the neighbor behind them's yard. And they'll submit the plans, we'll review it. If we agree with it, we'll give them a permit. If we don't agree with it, they will not get a permit until they correct it. So.
And with this is obviously not going to cover the people who already have done that.
Unfortunately not.
'Cause I know there's a significant number of people on Huntington, or they've had neighbors all around them, and they have a pond all the time.
And this is where we're facing an issue that becomes what we call a civil domestic dispute between them and their neighbor. They have to go to court, and somebody got to prove somebody wrong, somebody got to prove somebody right, and that's a very tedious task to do. They have to do soil borings with the fill area to prove that this fill was added to the site, it wasn't there before. There are cases where we cannot answer. They're coming to us, what can we do about it? we cannot enforce it. We can review it, we can make sure it's done right, but we cannot enforce it unless we have an ordinance in place.
Or questions?
Yes. When it comes to this, when you're talking about people having issues, are we talking 3 dozen or just a handful?
There's going to be quite a bit. There are lots of houses here that are having drainage issues. So far, we handled this year about 7 complaints,
Okay.
so that's in 1 year.
Would this also include gardens, flower beds?
Uh-oh.
That's a good
Well,
question.
I'm just asking because my wife is a flower person, so I know how many times I have to wheelbarrow bags of mulch and stuff, so I'm just,
That's a good question. What's happening with the flower beds, people usually put them along their fence line.
right.
Now, the neighbor used to be draining through that flower bed on their property, but now they interrupted it, so it becomes an issue to the homeowner that didn't have the flower bed, caused by the flower bed from the neighbor. Those issues, again, don't qualify under this ordinance because, again, it's something that historically was happening but got interrupted. So the neighbor got to deal with that situation, try to correct their own problem at that point.
Okay.
We cannot prevent people doing flower beds if their flower beds only not burning, not
Right,
sloping their
right.
property.
No, no, I
The
understand.
runoff from those is much lesser than the runoff from a whole yard that gets graded.
And a house that was here, let's say, since 1950, you know how sometimes the deterioration where it drops, if they wanted to build that back up, they would have to contact the city.
They have to apply for a permit, yes. They have to hire somebody to come up with a plan, submit the plan to Dave's office. He'll send it to us, we'll review it, and if it's approval, we'll issue a permit.
Okay, thank you.
So Hal, will this address those issues that we had years ago with the battles between the neighbors raising over one, pushing the water over there, and then they raised and pushed the water over to him, and then the one on the other side got pissed off and they raised theirs up and pushed it back over that way. So, and then you told me there wasn't anything we could do about it.
Right.
Is that gonna address this?
This is, unfortunately, this is not a retroactive ordinance that can go back.
But it'll
historically.
prevent
It'll
the
prevent
future, 'cause we used to
yes.
get that, what, about once,
Yes.
twice a year?
Yep, it prevents future occurrences like that.
Okay.
If we catch him, that's the only problem, we gotta catch him also, somebody have to report him. So,
That's the hard part.
Going back to what the mayor said,
But
you're saying any amount of filler at all, because we all know, I mean, stuff dies, bushes die, there's rottage, there's holes. I mean, my house was built in 1950, so it looked like Vietnam back there when I first bought it, before I cleared it all out. You're talking a bag or two here and there. I mean, I don't want to split hairs, and I'm not
Right,
trying to
right.
like condescend to you. I'm
No,
just
no,
trying to
it's-
get an idea of exactly where we're gonna put the line on this.
it becomes a judgment issue, they still should ask the question before they do it. And
Okay.
then we'll assess it at that point. If it merits a process, we'll tell them you need to follow the process. If it doesn't merit it, we'll let it go. Tell them, okay, just make sure you don't drain on somebody else. Confine your drainage to your property. I mean, we gotta use some judgment in there, but it's better to do it before the fact than having to handle it after the fact.
Gotcha.
So that's a good question. I mean, is if you've got, like, say, you use his yard, for example, you have a low spot in the middle, you could add some dirt to it, but you're not affecting the drainage of the lot on either side.
As long as you confine it to your property, you're gold. If you start draining on your neighbors, you
I was
create an
almost a
issue.
foot, I was almost a foot lower when I first bought my house,
Mm-hmm.
and I had some concerns with the neighbors. This was years back.
Mm-hmm.
I assured them and let them come over and walk it and said, I'm just not, no one's building anything up. I'm just trying to get from the middle of July, not having a pond in my backyard. Because then we're gonna have calls
Mm-hmm. Sure.
about mosquitoes and everything else. It was substantially lower. So
Yeah.
I just brought it in, but there was no like crazy grading or anything done. It was
Right.
just kind
Yeah.
of to keep up with the Joneses, so to speak.
But still, it's better to ask a question about what you're proposing to do before. In the past, the city used to supply residents with drainage material. They'll come in and state that we have a drainage problem in our backyard. We need to do something about it. This is what we propose to do, and they'll submit the plan to the city. We will review it. If it's okay, the city will come out and pay them for the piping, for the small catch basins, and the city used to allow them to take it all the way into the curb line. And that was before my time, so we looked at it as, yes, you solved your problem, but now you're pushing your water into the street. That's gonna freeze and cause a hazard, and we stopped it altogether. We said, you cannot punch through the curb, you cannot put water in the street, because if it freezes, somebody's gonna hit it on a cold icy day and hit somebody and not be able to stop, so we stopped that whole process altogether. They can still provide a plan to take it to a sewer, if there's a sewer available. We can work with them on that one. So,
Gotcha.
Any other questions?
So for
Comments?
just clarification, so anytime anyone's gonna add anything that could raise the height of their yard, they need to contact the city.
They should ask the question before they do it, yes.
And then for anyone, I know a lot of people that don't pull permits and just do projects.
No.
I know, shocking. But then do their neighbors need to feel like they need to call the city and let them know?
If they
If
are
it's gonna
impacted, they
start-
should, because we like to hear about it then before it becomes too late. I mean, if it goes 10 years, okay. My neighbor filled 20 years ago, now I'm flooding. How can we handle it now? It's way
Okay.
past our.
And I know it should be neighbor to neighbor talk first, but,
And lots of times neighbors do talk together. I mean, they decide that, okay, you fill, I fill, we create this swale in between, let it drain toward the road. We're okay with that if they talk to each other.
wouldn't that be
So,
nice?
but it doesn't happen all the time.
No.
When we hear about it, it's too late, it's a complaint, then without a permit like this, we can't do anything about it.
And if someone is calling with a complaint, what number do they call?
Probably call the building department, or they can call the code officer, my number too.
How much is a permit for something like this?
We haven't gone that far yet.
Oh, okay. I
We
was
just want to get it through this study session first, then work on
Let's
it.
discuss it, because this is preliminary.
Because I've already gotten a few calls. My
Yeah,
neighbor
just-
put a pool in, now they have a deck this year. Oh, now they added fencing, and now my foot's, my yard's a foot shorter, and I have a pond in my yard. What do I do? So,
As long as you reach one of our numbers, we all talk, so
Okay.
it's not a big deal.
okay. I didn't know if there was a specific.
No, it's
spot
best to
that-
go to the code officer first, but it doesn't matter.
Okay, thank
So
you.
Hal, we've also had people's basements flood because people were pulling stunts. Am I correct?
Yes. What happens is, again, once you start shedding your runoff on your neighbor's property, it ends up most of the times on their, in the footing drains. On the side of the house, goes down to the footing drains. Sometimes the sanitary sewers cannot handle it, they're connected to the sanitary, or the sump pumps cannot handle it, end up causing a backup in the basement. It becomes hard to prove, but still, we prefer to hit it before it happens and prevent it, so we don't have to deal with the situation afterward.
Did you guys get a lot of these complaints near like the vacated alleys? Like over on the east side where they used to be, they closed off the alleys. A lot of our neighborhoods over there,
When the-
it's back to back now, where it used to be an alley.
Nelly, yeah, when the alleys get vacated, of course, if they are not along a subdivision line, it gets split between the neighbors, so they move their fence to it, but usually those are flatter areas, so the water ends up naturally going to that low
All over
point.
the city, it happens.
Okay, I wasn't
It is
sure if
pretty-
there was.
Yeah, there's no rhyme or reason to it, just happens.
Gotcha.
So,
Thanks.
Any other comments, questions?
No, sir.
Thank you, guys.
Well, while you're here, you might as well go through your reports.
Oh,
Why get up?
things are moving pretty good. The water main on Pennsylvania is completed, except for the restoration. They started mobilizing to Wendy Court, that's the next phase. After Wendy Court, they're going to do the Breland water main. The sewer lining is progressing, they're almost completed the project. And the gas station at the DPW is almost completed. They poured the concrete, they're ready to set the pumps and
Very good.
purge the diesel tank, clean it, and then we're back in business. And besides that, we have a few reviews on the table that we are doing, site plan reviews. Otherwise,
Is the work that's being done on Pennsylvania Road, I don't know who
Bidigeri. Yeah,
is
Bidigeri.
that coming into Riverview?
Which Pennsylvania?
The Pennsylvania and just towards Fort Street, they're putting some sewer lines or something in.
That's all from Grange to the west side of the city?
Yes.
Yes.
That's the water main that we're talking about. That's the Pennsylvania water main.
Yeah.
We're replacing that old water main that keeps breaking. If you remember, during COVID, we had lots of fights with Eagle to get it permitted. They wouldn't let us sneak it between the storm and the gas lines, and we had to appeal it to the higher-ups at Eagle. They finally agreed to let us thread it in. And believe me, it was a very tight spot to thread it under a creek between the gas line, the sewers, and knock on wood, they were able to put it through, and it's,
Is it lined? Is that a sewer lining?
no, it's a,
New
we
pipe.
don't, we don't line water main, it's a water main pipe that's made out of polyethylene, fused pipe, it's one
I
piece.
saw it. I saw the pressure in
It's,
there.
Uh-huh.
It gets fused, pressure tested, chlorinated, then they pull it into the ground, then they connect the houses to it.
And it's working.
It's working
Very good.
And we're very close to that high-pressure gas line?
very close.
Okay.
That's why we didn't want to burst it. Bursting the old main would have put some pressure. So whenever we get very close, we directional drill it instead.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank
Dave
you.
Skirdo, while you're here,
I'm here, okay? We continue to work with Riverview Energy Systems as they expand the treatment facility or the reclamation facility. We did last week, I did have a fitness gym call me for some preliminary information from Riverview Commons. I also had a noodles-type restaurant call me for preliminary information for Riverview Plaza. Kinship Cannabis got approved at the last Planning Commission meeting. We're expecting Green Acres Cannabis to get approved at the April 20th meeting. And the 2 JARS applications are going in for their first review from Planning Commission April 20th.
Any update on Dunkin' Donuts?
They had to go back to the drawing board. There's like, they need a bypass lane issue, they need a access agreement from Concessions. So they're still pursuing, but they have some homework to do.
Okay.
I have a question on that. When that was Denny's, you had to pull in
Yes,
to that access that Concessions had, correct?
yes, correct.
Do they have enough room there to cut out an entrance themselves on that lot?
They're gonna, it's one of the items they have to look at, because right now Concessions showed up at the public hearing stating they do not have a written agreement to have access.
Okay.
And no one's approached them yet, so they got some work to do there. If they don't get that access agreement from Concessions, then they have to punch out to Fort Street.
Okay. All right, thank you.
What's that?
Anything else today?
$100.
Yeah. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
You gonna take that back?
yeah, I know. Jennifer Boyer, engineering update?
2 things to report. We have the DCCS bids are back, and we made a recommendation to the landfill committee. So that will be coming to council next week. If it's approved, they can start pretty much right away. We'd like to get the contract signed immediately after the meeting next week, and then we can probably mobilize that following week. So we'd be able to get started, and construction would hopefully be completed by Memorial Day. The second item, and I just lost my train of thought. The Wellfield O&M bids were posted, but there was a glitch with the way it was posted, so they had to extend the due date out to the 20th. So we won't be able to get those bids back until the May meeting, and we'll have a recommendation. Well, it won't come from us, but there will be a recommendation for that award as well. So that's all I got.
Thank you. Anything else?
Other business, that's where we're
All
at.
other business. This is the recycling update that we need to get from Jeff and some options.
Yes, Your Honor, thank you. So we had previously applied and got a couple grants. One was for a second off-site recycling center. And there was another grant from Eagle that was for curbside recycling carts. It was 2 parts. It was Eagle and
Recycling partnership.
second partnership, what was the name?
Recycling partnership?
Yep, recycling partnership, where the totes were actually going to be done on the west side of the states. And they've reached out back to us because we told them we want to put it on hold. So we've got to make a decision if we're going to move forward with those. I did ask, and in the landfill committee meeting today, I did ask Jennifer to review Part 115, that it's a new regulation from the county that passed on March 29th in the state, and there are some requirements in there. However, I feel that we can still make those requirements without these grants and going forward with these projects. One of the requirements were, if you're gonna offer recycling, you just have to offer it, so it could be subscription-based. There was some idea about possibly taking the grant for the carts, but if you do that, you have to maintain the carts, inventory them when they break. You gotta have DPW ship them back out to the residents. You've gotta store them, so there's additional costs there. So, Dave and I have been reached out by Eagle, and they said, what do you want to do? They did give us a 2-year hiatus, so that if we did select the grants, we wouldn't have to start for a couple of years. So I thought it was just best for Jennifer the scrub the new Part 115 and get back to us and figure out what our true requirements are.
Do
But
do we have a price for the second recycling location? We were gonna do that over on Kraus, right, where Signature is? Was it that the preliminary?
Mayor to Councilman Norton, yes. And we had Sohio work on it with us with fencing, cement, lighting, the whole thing. I believe the grant, Dave, was 50. Wasn't that a $50,000 grant for the offsite, or 55?
Yeah, just under 50, and then part of it was those handheld bins.
Yes, which
We're
were
trying to
5.
negotiate
So
that.
it was close to 55 with the handheld bins. But when we did the site improvements with what needed to be done, we were well over $80,000.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
85,000.
so that means
That might
that's
answer.
easy.
Yep,
Yep, that's
Yep.
easy.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
you bet.
So I think just in general, because we've had discussions before on the second recycling center, I don't want to assume anything, but is there any interest in pursuing a second recycling center? Okay, easy one. Okay, now one of the options we discussed earlier was the recycling by subscription. And so, but there was also, if we choose to go that route, do we take advantage of the grant and get the totes, or the bins, I'll just say? And if we do that, then the cost would be a few dollars less by subscription, but now we have to maintain those carts, we have to store them for whatever length of time
We have to
get
repair
started
them.
on this, and repair them all. So there could still end up being a significant cost to the city for these free carts. So, and just for this matter of discussion, is there interest in pursuing recycling by subscription from council?
Going back to our meeting prior to this, just to make sure I understood it correctly, if we had subscription, the company would deal with all of that, correct? So it would cost the city no money,
Correct.
individuals would do that.
Correct.
As long as it didn't cost the city any money, I'm okay if individuals within the city wanted to sign up and they dealt with the subscriber. Anything that is going to add to our DPW or any workforce and cost us money, we're in a deficit. I'm not willing to,
So if we accepted the grant, that's when it could potentially cost us
Correct.
a couple dollars. So I guess if that's the case, I'm okay with people signing up if they choose to. I don't want to accept the grant to cost money. That's all.
I'm not going to ask you because you've
But
already
the
made it very
Councilman
loud and
Robbins'
clear
point
to
is,
me.
if we took the grant, the citizens may save a couple of dollars a month if we provide the cart. So if we didn't, then you only pay a few more dollars a month for that, and we don't have the headache and the cost of maintaining them. All that would be done by whoever the
Hauler.
vendor is.
exactly.
But explain how that works. I mean, I know the city of Wyandotte does by subscription. Who manages that? Just give me a little bit, 10,000 foot view of how it
Yeah,
works.
so my understanding is you sign up through the city that you want curbside recycling. They would deliver a bin and they'd pick up every other week. I don't think it's every week, but I think it's every other week.
Mhm.
And then you would then pay a fee, whatever the contracted rate for that would be.
How's that fee assessed?
I think they put it out for bid, and they had haulers bid on it. And then they selected the best bid or the most qualified bid. And then every month, or every 2 months, I believe it's added to the water bill. So it would be called a refuge or a recycling or whatever fee. I'm not 100% sure because I didn't vouch any of those water bills in the other cities, but that's my understanding.
So we
that-
collect it, and then is there an administrative fee that we charge for that?
We potentially could to process that on each water bill.
Do you sign up, like, does every resident get a chance to sign up one time each year? Or can they sign up at any time?
I would think, and I'm not completely sure, I mean, there would be an initial sign-up or initial, and then I would think that you would limit that to once or twice a year at the most.
Okay, that's what I was,
Probably a annual type thing.
Could be annual, just like annual enrollment in the healthcare and, or semi-annual, but,
and that would mean cancellation is annual as well?
yeah, I don't know how that would work, but that's a good question.
Okay.
I will look into that.
Going back,
Go ahead.
none of the 1.74 mils was for recycling, correct?
Correct.
Correct.
That was all trash.
Correct.
Okay. And from our conversation from the previous meeting, that would be Stevens who's doing the recycling. They're the only one that turned in a bid.
Correct.
Okay.
And if we decide to do this, it would go out to bid again, correct?
I think you would have to, because
Yeah,
they
it's
would
been
only
so
hold
long,
us
yeah.
those prices for 90 days, and it's been,
And is there a minimum number of subscribers required?
no, but they felt that if it's offered, that they would
Yeah.
get like 20 or 25% of the city pickups. I don't know, I think, Jeff, do you know how many pickups we have in Riverview? Is it 4,000 pickups or 40?
It's gotta be just right around there or just under.
Yeah, I thought someone told me one time it was about 4,000 stops a week.
I'm not exactly sure, so I don't wanna say, but
Yeah.
the number does sound familiar.
Yeah,
And if that recycling container is contaminated because of a greasy pizza box, that's on them.
them. They're supposed to take that to the recycling center,
Okay.
not to Riverview.
Not to Riverview landfill.
It's supposed to go to a recycling center and be sorted. And you're right, if it's contaminated, they push it over to the trash pile, I'm sure.
Right. Okay.
So was one of these grants for, not the bins, but the handheld totes?
That was the first one.
And can we take advantage of that one? Because
No, it was part of the whole
Oh.
off-site.
the
It wasn't
So
either
we
or.
couldn't use those to bring those stuff to our recycling center at the landfill?
I don't believe those handhelds, they were part of the,
They were part of the package, but I can check into it,
I mean, because see, we'll still have a substantial number of people who don't do the subscription, but still bring their recyclings to the recycling center at the landfill. So if we can provide totes to make that a little bit easier, if it's part of the grant, then we should pursue that, but I agree
Dave, will
with
you check
Councilman
into
Norton,
that
you don't want
for-
to put it invest
for the mayor?
in this.
thank you.
Any other feedback?
No, sir.
That's all I had under open business.
Any other business? Now's the time for public comment.
Mayor and Council, Ken Kyleman, 20243 Coachwood, Riverview. At last week's council meeting, I made a suggestion related to the fiscal 23-24 budget and the restricted assets related to land preserve, more specifically, the 3 accounts that track these assets. In addition, I asked 5 questions, some old, some new, and I await answers to those questions. Tonight, I'd like to follow up with a question about my suggestion, ask some relatively mundane scheduling questions, and reprise those 5 unanswered questions. First, the question about my suggestion. Does the council intend to request that the city manager provide reporting on the 3 accounts that track the restricted assets related to land preserve? Next, the relatively mundane scheduling questions. When will the city manager be submitting to council a recommended budget for the next fiscal year? When will that recommended budget be available for public inspection? Has the council determined the time and place of any study sessions related to the proposed budget? And has the council determined the time and place of the public hearing related to the proposed budget? And finally, the questions that I asked at last week's meeting that remain unanswered. Do we have an estimate of when the city will be producing quarterly investment reporting in compliance with Public Act 213 of 2007? Do we have an estimate when the city will begin producing the quarterly reporting required by Section 8.5D of the city charter? Why does the 2022-23 budget state that the interest income of its environmental escrow accounts will be used as a part of the land preserve's operating transfers to the general fund and local streets fund, when note 5 of the annual audit states that these earnings are restricted? How was the compliance account funded in the past, and how is it currently being funded? And is the 1990 agreement with the State of Michigan Department of Natural Resources still in effect? And if so, how much was deposited into the perpetual care fund for 2021 and 22 because of the solid waste provision of this agreement? And how much is projected to be deposited for 2022? Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just real quick give some high-level answers to some of these questions. Does council intend to request the city manager provide reporting on the 3 accounts that track the restricted access? That's all part of our auditing process, isn't it? I'm sure you're talking about the environmental escrow, capital escrow, and what's the third one? Is there a third one at the landfill?
Compliance.
And compliance. So,
Mayor, just for your information too, that the 2 accounts, the financial assurance and the perpetual account, that will be combined into one. The state is now just requesting one.
mhm.
So that currently we're doing the paperwork right now to do that. And second, those counts will be properly funded by state requirement and by balance and/or letter of credit. They hit us with a huge inflationary increase, so we are currently in the means of working with PNC Bank. We had it to the goal line, and then March 29th, they changed the fund forms and such. So we are currently working with the new forms, with legal, with PNC, with the investment guys, and so we're on track to do that. However, just to let everyone know, we have been in contact with the state and Eagle, and they said, let's do this right and do it with the new forms, so there's no penalty, there's no interest for this not being done. So it works in our advantage because we'll do it right the first time and we'll be set for a whole year. Correct, Jennifer? Once it's completed. Because they used to have 2 different dates, now they're just going to have 1 date, which makes budgeting and everything else very completely much easier.
Right. And the next question was, when will the city manager be submitting to the council a recommended budget for next fiscal year? That would be towards the end of this month?
Well,
Early
let
May.
me answer this. So historically, the
That's
charter
normally-
says the first Monday. It's never been the first Monday. It's usually as early as tonight is
Mhm.
early. 2 things have happened. Well, many things have
Yes.
happened, but let's go by the 2 big ones. One, we do not have a budget and finance director, so Heather has been doing a very vigilant job compiling, and I've been reviewing with her. We have met with all the department heads. We have their budget. We have the city manager's proposed budget. However, you know, that 180-page book takes some time to put together. This week, Heather seems to think they have the book, but I'm not going to commit to that. But what I will commit to is all the departments' goals and objectives and all of their white pages of their budget, which gives you dollar amounts and totals. It just doesn't have the additional fluff in there with debt schedules and things that, everything's reflected in there for an operating budget of 2023, 2024. We will put the books together in the meantime, but we I wasn't sure about this, but we already did a budget calendar, and we're still following this budget calendar. I know I had COVID, and so I was out a week, so that put us a week behind, but I believe, and Heather posted it, but I don't think we posted the budget schedule, but you're due to get these late this week, early next week, the white pages at least, if not the books, because I'm not sure and complete the books. And then it was scheduled for 24, 25 meetings, April 24th and 25th. I don't know if that's been sent out yet, with coming back in May at the hearing dates. So I will get with Heather. Right now, you're 1 day late. Starting tomorrow, you're 1 day late on
Your
the
Honor.
white sheets.
But,
Your Honor, a
Councilman,
lot of demands are being put on Jeff. He does not have a finance director. We passed this schedule, we're violating this, we're violating that. Jeff, I don't know if the rest of the council wants to do this. Why don't you get a price from Plant Moran? We'll get everything done this way. If you people want to spend that money to get it done and not wait for him, I'm on board. If not, we're just gonna have to wait. So get us a price and we'll go from there.
I think that if you get the white pages and the totals, all the revenue.
Just
general-
get us a price.
Okay.
Thank you.
yep. And just actually, the rest of these, on timing, all that will, once you have the books and
And once he
But-
finds out if they're gonna do it, we'll have a schedule, and we can bring
do the
everything
schedule,
out.
Yes, so.
Thank you.
Now, as far as the quarterly reporting, Mayor, and I will answer that, I've told you as soon as I've got to the depth in the 5-year plan, we're gonna do that. And it's not so much where it's a financial statement, because you can't look at a city the same way as you do a enterprise or a
Right.
corporate. But we can have budget to actual reports to see how we're doing. And that's really what I think, and Plant has told me that they can help me format that really quickly, so we'll get that. As soon as we can get that, we will get that. It's not falling on deaf ears.
Right.
It's just a million things going on right now, so I will get that.
What,
Right.
once we get through this budget,
Yep,
and you're saying tentatively the 24th, 25th,
that's when we're supposed to sit down and talk about it all.
and I know because you're wearing 3 hats, you're just using a template that was left for you. You can update that in the future, so all of that is on a timely manner.
Yeah, well, we're gonna get you the book, the way you want the book. I'm not
Right.
against that. It's
Right.
just a lot of legwork, and Heather's done a lot of it. And again, kudos to her and all the department heads to timely get their budgets to them, but we had to do, and everybody knows that, I'm not making this up. Everybody works their budget, then they sit down with me for meetings, and we go through it, make sure it makes sense, make sure we balance, as the state says, you have to submit a state
Yep. balanced budget.
balanced budget, which we've done, Heather has done. So now, if I get you the white pages and the goals and objectives, you can study that on your own time, then we can come back and we can fill in the book, and then we'll get it to you.
Right. Not a question for you, probably a question for you three, because we're new. When was the last time you guys received quarterly financial?
Never have.
You never have?
No. This council waived that. This is all new.
But-
Council waived that in the past.
Before
Before
this council?
Yeah, it's been waived all continually. It's been waived by the council. I feel that Jeff is being set up for failure.
Yep.
I don't like this.
I don't disagree.
And
I'm just trying to learn here.
If we're gonna do those quarterly reports, let's not demand them right now, let's bring it in later. If
Right.
we are gonna demand them right now, then let's have Plant Moran do it. I'm getting tired of hearing this.
No,
We've got too many other things we're trying to do here.
I understand that. I 100%, and I don't want to spend extra money. I'd rather.
Well, then you won't hear anything if you get it all done.
Right.
And
But,
we can get it done, you wanna write a check.
and I'm willing to wait till the budget.
Then we need to just let this go and let him work at his own time. to
Right,
get
now
this
let me
done.
circle back around.
Okay.
You guys been on council longer than us. You didn't have quarterly financial reports. You being the city attorney, we're supposed to follow the city charter.
Right.
We took an oath to uphold that. So we're going to fix it in the future. Is there anything, the 7 of us, 5 here today, is doing anything illegal?
You know, the short answer is no. No court is going to hold you culpable for anything that has, and I've been here since '81, however number of years that is.
Okay.
I never remember seeing in any agenda packet any quarterly report. Now, whether it's distributed outside of that or I
Right.
wouldn't see it? Maybe, but I don't remember it. So this has just been a pattern, and it's just happened, and so it's great that we know about it, and I think that in good faith, we're attempting to fix it, but I don't think there's any culpability at all.
Right, and I think the accusation, or the the thought process here, well, I'll get you to Ken in a second, that because we're not doing this, we're hiding something, we're doing something wrong, we're trying to keep it from the people, and you hide it in these quarterly reports. And that's just totally not the case.
No.
We just haven't had, well, now we don't have the staff to do it, and I think it's the focus in the, going forward to work on that. But there's going to be a cost to this.
Right, and going back to what Randy said, we don't have the authority to change the city charter. Because it's, the easiest way to do it would be like, okay, we're just going to waive this off.
Well, and there's also a state statute that also applies, and, you know, I've had conversations with our new city manager, and he's aware of the requirements, and it's just like, it's the old adage of, you know, how much can you put on to a person?
And
I know that he's committed to me privately, not that he needs to commit to me to anything, but
Right.
he's told me that, you know, his timetable for getting this in compliance. Next year, I can assure you that this whole thing is gonna be a whole lot smoother with a lot less controversy or opportunity for sniping, but right now, he's in the middle of a battle, and I know that having spent time with him on major projects that are gonna bring revenue to the city, that's where the focus is, as well as trying to bring his accounting and finance staff up to speed to fulfill the obligations. Plus, this is also his first round as city manager, meeting with department heads. How many of us have done that? That's a whole new learning curve, so,
Right.
yeah, with a singular
Well,
exception.
and full disclosure for anybody on TV or anything, you have been in contact with all 7 of us individually. We know what's going on. We know that it's not that simple. You're getting a new landfill person up to speed, so you're over there. You don't have a finance department head. We understand that. I was just asking a question to try to learn, because I know in 4 years I haven't got it, but I didn't know about it. You know, from you letting us know that you've never had it either.
No, never.
So,
I had an extremely revealing situation with tax rolls. I didn't have a clue about, because Doug functioned as the city treasurer. So we had to submit to the county the taxes we collected, we had to balance them out, we had to, that happens in the middle of the budget season, so.
Jeff, just out of curiosity, how many hours a day are you putting in?
No,
No, straight
it
up.
don't No, it don't
You
matter.
work for us, we
No,
don't
I
know.
don't.
How many hours are you putting in?
8 hours.
Is that true?
No,
For the
it
first
isn't.
half and 8 for the second
No,
half.
it's-
But I don't normally do this, but Mr. Conlon, you want to follow up?
I think my comments have been misunderstood. I in no way want to disparage the job that Jeff is doing. I understand, well, I guess I don't understand, but I can try and understand the pressure he's under and the job he's doing. And he has my support 100%. But as I've become to get involved in some of these things and read the budgets and read the audits and read the charter, I find things that are confusing to me that seem to stand in opposition to one another, things we're ignoring, we're not doing, we're not following state laws, and I'm just bringing them to the fore. These are things that the prior administration hadn't taken care of, and maybe had left instructions of continuing to do it the old way, and I was just trying to bring to light certain things that need to be done correctly and in order, in compliance with the charter, in compliance with the law, and bring everything out into the open. And I am confident that's what Jeff wants to do. He has my support. Please don't take that as an accusation against him, or the mayor, or the council, or any on that desk up there from hiding anything. That's not my intention.
Thank you.
And Jeff, I just want to say to you and your team, and Heather, I know you guys have been putting in more hours than your clock will show, and we really, really appreciate it. Getting everything organized, structured, streamlined, and getting things together so that next year at this time, it'll just be putting numbers in a computer and printing it out and going forward. So really
Wouldn't that be
appreciate you
nice?
going through all this.
Well, I appreciate that, and like.
Please tell your
just-
team.
Well, thank you, and just, even things like, working with Jeff Webb and so high, like on the water rates, like that schedule I found, I went, holy cow, I didn't know about that. And, going through the infrastructure costs and the increase from GWLA, I mean, You know, and I've asked the question, and I don't think any of you knew about that. And I'm like,
No, no, when you
holy,
say holy cow, I think there's 7 other holy cows behind you.
you know, so I just didn't understand how that was all calculated until I dug deep with Heather, and I thought, I gotta let you guys know, because this is,
Well, we
for me
appreciate that.
personally, you know, making those decisions are, you know,
We
they're not easy,
appreciate the
so, you know, but
transparency.
I'm trying.
The fact that you stay so busy and I receive personally a ton of phone calls from you, I appreciate that. Because I'm still very much learning in this whole thing, but having somebody to say, hey, I just want to touch base with you, I just want to, it's encouraging. So just, I appreciate you, I'm sure
Yeah,
we all do.
thank you.
And it's
And I appreciate my
being
team.
in the know helps to be able to go out and tell whoever is asking whoever questions. Thank you, and I appreciate the constant contact. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Anything else? Oh, we're up past all the business, public comment. I will finish with, this is National Public Safety Telecommunications Week, so I'd like to acknowledge and thank the dispatchers we have. I think they do a really, really great job. And just some discussions we had with combined dispatch and all that stuff, I get a better feel for how much work these people do, and I can't imagine the pressure. It's not something I would do, but I would just want to, wish them all the best at this, especially during this week. So thank you. With that, we're adjourned.